The biting Chicago wind, known to locals as the Hawk, howled through the steel and glass canyons of the Loop, carrying a furious flurry of snowflakes that swirled under the cold, electric glow of the streetlights. Against this brutal winter backdrop, a small, determined figure pushed onward. Ashley, a girl of only 5, fought against the gale, her tiny, chapped fingers locked onto the icy metal of a rusty shopping cart. Tucked inside, wrapped in thin, worn-out blankets, were her 6-month-old twin siblings, Jackson and Olivia. Their small faces, reddened by the relentless cold, peeked out from the layers of fabric, their wide eyes fixed on their older sister as she battled the storm. Ashley paused, her breath clouding in the freezing air as she gasped for a moment of rest. She looked down at the babies, her heart aching at the sight of their trembling lips. Carefully, she readjusted the thin blankets, a futile attempt to shield them from the wind's sharp teeth. "It's going to be okay," she whispered, her voice a fragile thing against the city's roar. "Weck, find a warm place, I promise." A sudden, unwelcome memory flashed in her mind, the derelict SRO hotel room they'd been staying in, with its leaking pipes, paper-thin walls that did nothing to stop the cold, and the hard linoleum floor where they slept, huddled together for warmth. Ashley shook her head violently, forcing the image away. They couldn't go back there, not with the Chicago winter tightening its grip with each passing day. Summoning a final reserve of 5-year-old strength, she leaned into the cart and pushed. Each step was a monumental effort against the wind and the snow, which was already piling up to her knees. Her oversized boots, riddled with holes, were soaked through, offering no protection from the biting cold. The twins began to whimper, their soft cries nearly lost in the symphony of the storm. Hot tears streamed down Ashley's frozen cheeks. She had to find shelter. She had to save her brother and sister. The snow was coming down harder now, a whiteout that reduced visibility to mere feet. She struggled to keep her eyes open, blinking furiously against the flakes plastering her eyelashes. The cart felt impossibly heavy, and her small arms trembled with exhaustion. Then, as she turned a corner off Michigan Avenue, she saw it. Through the thick curtain of snow, the warm golden lights of a massive building beckoned. The peninsula. Grand, luxurious, and most importantly, warm. With a surge of renewed hope, Ashley steered the cart toward the hotel's service alley. Her heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drumbeat of desperation and fatigue. As she got closer, the stark contrast between her frozen world and the palpable heat radiating from the building was almost painful. She stopped before a service door, hesitating. She knew with a certainty that belied her years that people like her, dirty, poor, homeless, were not welcome in a place like this. But the twins' cries were growing louder, more insistent, and she could feel the deep, dangerous cold seeping into her own bones. With a courage born of pure despair, Ashley raised a trembling hand and knocked. The sound was a dull thud, muffled by the falling snow. As she waited, praying for a response, she looked down at her siblings. Their tiny eyes were closed now, their cheeks flushed a feverish pink from the cold. She knew they couldn't last much longer out here. "Please," she whispered, knocking again, this time with more force. "Please, someone help us." The silence that answered was absolute, deafening. Ashley knocked once more, her small fists now pounding on the door with all her might. "Help, please," she cried, her voice raw and desperate, swallowed by the storm. Tears froze on her cheeks as she kept knocking, the sound of her fists blending with the baby's sobs and the wind's howl. She glanced around, panic finally taking hold. The snow fell even more heavily, the cold slicing through her thin coat. She didn't know how much longer Jackson and Olivia could survive. With one last look at the silent, unforgiving door, Ashley made a decision. She couldn't wait for help that might never arrive. Gathering her last ounce of strength, she began pushing the cart again, moving around the side of the building. There had to be another way in, another chance. She refused to give up. With each agonizing step through the deepening snow, she repeated the words like a prayer, to herself and to the babies. "We can do it. We'll be okay. I promise." The storm raged around her, a furious blizzard, but Ashley pressed on, a tiny beacon of determination against the fury of winter, carrying the precious weight of her hopes and their uncertain future. David Miller straightened his silk tie, an automatic gesture honed by years of tense boardroom meetings. At 60, the billionaire owner of the Miller Hospitality Group still ran his empire with an iron fist. But tonight's meeting had been particularly grueling. Heated arguments over new developments in the West Loop and budget projections had dragged on for hours, leaving him drained and irritable. Deciding to skip the main lobby and the requisite glad handing, David opted to leave through the hotel's back service exit. He needed a blast of cold air and a moment of solitude before heading back to his empty penthouse on Lakeshore Drive. As he pushed the heavy service door open, he was met with an assault of icy wind and driving snow. Muttering under his breath, he pulled up the collar of his tailored coat, ready to make a dash for his car. Then he heard it, a faint sound, almost completely consumed by the wind's howl. A cry. David paused, frowning, his eyes scanning the dimly lit alley. And there, partially obscured by the shadows and swirling snow, he saw a small figure pushing something. "Who's there?" he called out, his deep voice cutting through the frigid air. The figure froze, and for a second David thought they would run. But then, slowly, the figure turned to face him. David felt the air catch in his throat. A little girl, no older than 5, stood before him. Her face was smudged with dirt, pale from the cold, and framed by tangled, wet hair. But her eyes were huge and frightened, yet they shone with a fierce determination that startled him. "Please, sir," the girl's voice was barely a whisper. "Can you help us?" David stepped forward into the snow, noticing for the first time what she was pushing, a rusty shopping cart. And inside, "My God," he murmured, seeing the 2 babies bundled in thin, inadequate blankets. "They're cold," the girl said, her voice trembling. "I tried to keep them warm, but—" David acted on pure instinct. In a flash he was beside the cart, feeling the dangerous chill coming off the infants. "Come with me," he said, his tone firm, leaving no room for argument. "Now." The girl, Ashley, hesitated for a moment, but just then one of the babies let out a pained cry, as if making the decision for her. David scooped both infants into his arms, feeling their frightening coldness even through his thick wool coat. "Grab the cart," he instructed the girl. "We're going inside." As he led them into the warm back corridor of the hotel, David's heart hammered against his ribs. What was he doing? This was insane. He should be calling social services, the police, letting the authorities handle it. But something in the girl's eyes, in the protective way she hovered over the babies, stopped him. Once inside, under the fluorescent lights, David could finally see the children clearly. And that's when a strange sense of unease settled over him. There was something familiar about the baby's features, the specific shape of the little girl's nose. He couldn't place it, but the feeling was deeply unnerving. Mr. Miller, the surprised voice of an employee, Kevin, pulled him from his thoughts. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, Kevin," David replied, his tone brokering no argument. "Get the presidential suite ready." The employee stared, his eyes wide with confusion at the sight of the children, but years of working for David Miller had taught him not to ask questions. "Yes, sir, right away." Riding the private elevator up to the top floor, David watched the girl. She was clearly exhausted, yet her gaze never strayed from the babies in his arms. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Ashley," she answered, watching him warily. And there, Max and Sophie. David nodded, the feeling of unease intensifying. Those names. Why did they sound so familiar? The elevator doors opened directly into the sprawling presidential suite. Ashley stared, her mouth agape at the opulence around her. "Kevin," David called to the employee who had followed them. Bring clean clothes for the children and have the kitchen prepare something warm for them, soup maybe." As Kevin hurried away to carry out the orders, David led Ashley into the massive marble bathroom. "Let's give them a warm bath," he said, turning the gold-plated faucets of the enormous tub. Ashley watched his every move, still cautious but visibly relieved to be out of the cold. "Your mother," David began hesitantly. "Where is she?" Ashley's face clouded over, a shadow passing across her young eyes. "She's gone," was all she said. David decided not to press. There would be time for questions later. Right now, the priority was these children. They carefully bathed the twins, Jackson and Olivia, who immediately perked up in the soothing warmth of the water. Ashley, though bone-weary, insisted on helping, her small fingers surprisingly gentle as she washed her siblings. When Kevin returned with clothes and food, David found himself in a truly surreal situation. Here he was, one of the most powerful men in Chicago, spoon-feeding soup to babies and helping a 5-year-old girl into a new, warm sweatshirt. As the children ate, he couldn't stop studying them. The feeling from before was growing stronger, more insistent. Something about Ashley's gestures, the way the babies smiled. "Emily," he said softly, "can you tell me what happened? How did you end up on the street?" The girl put down her spoon, tears welling in her large, tired eyes. "Mommy said we had to run away, that it was dangerous to stay, but then there was an accident." She swallowed hard. "She didn't wake up. I tried to wake her, but—" David felt his chest tighten. "What about your father?" Ashley visibly shuddered. "He heck a bad man. Mommy said never to let him find us." Ashley's words echoed in David's mind, stirring painful memories he had long suppressed. Memories of his own daughter, Jennifer, who had vanished years ago after a terrible argument. Shaking his head to clear the thoughts, David refocused. These children needed help, regardless of who they were. "You're safe now," he said, his voice softer than it had been in years. "I'll take care of you tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out what to do." Ashley looked at him, her eyes a mixture of hope and fear. "Can we stay?" David nodded, feeling an emotion he couldn't quite name. "Yes, dear, you can stay for now." Once the children were finally asleep, exhausted but safe in the vast king-sized bed, David kept watch. Looking at their small, sleeping forms, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story, something that connected him to these children in a way he didn't yet understand. With a sigh, he settled into a plush armchair nearby. Tomorrow, he promised himself, he would start digging. He would find out the truth about these children and why they felt so strangely, painfully familiar. For now, all he could do was watch over them and brace himself for whatever fate had in store. The sun had barely risen over Lake Michigan when David Miller awoke, his neck stiff from a night in the armchair. For a moment he was disoriented until his gaze fell upon the 3 small figures asleep in the massive bed of the presidential suite. The events of the previous night came rushing back. Standing silently, he approached the bed. Ashley slept on her side, a protective arm draped over the twins. Her face, now clean, looked even younger, more vulnerable in the morning light. David felt a pang in his chest, a confusing mix of pity and that same inexplicable familiarity. He picked up his phone and stepped out onto the suite's private balcony. The crisp morning air helped clear his head as he dialed a familiar number. "Mike, it's David. I need your services. It's a delicate matter and urgent." Mike had been his go-to private investigator for years, a discreet and ruthlessly efficient Chicago native. David gave him a brief, edited version of the situation, omitting his own burgeoning suspicions. "I want everything you can find on these children and their mother, top priority, Mike, and total discretion." Ending the call, David went back inside to find Ashley awake, watching him with a wary curiosity. "Good morning, Emily," he said softly. "Did you sleep well?" The girl nodded slowly. "The babies, they didn't cry all night? That never happens." David managed a small smile. Well, I guess they liked the comfy bed. How about some breakfast? While they waited for room service, David gently tried to learn more. Emily, can you tell me a bit more about your mom? What was she like? The girl was quiet for a moment, fiddling with the hem of her new pajamas. She was beautiful, Ashley finally said, her voice a mere whisper. And she sang to us every night, but sometimes she cried when she thought I was asleep. David's heart clenched. And you lived in a house before the accident. Ashley shook her head. No, we moved around. Mommy said it was an adventure, but I knew she was scared. Before David could ask more, the twins began to stir, their soft whimpers breaking the silence. Ashley was on her feet in an instant, her demeanor shifting from vulnerable child to practiced caregiver. Watching her tend to her siblings, David couldn't help but notice certain mannerisms, the way she tilted her head when concentrating, the way she furrowed her brow. Gestures that stirred ghosts of memories. Breakfast arrived, and David watched with a mixture of admiration and sorrow as Ashley skillfully fed the twins before touching her own food. The girl had shouldered responsibilities far beyond her years. Emily, David began carefully, you've done a wonderful job looking after your brothers, but I want you to know that now you can just be a kid. I'll help take care of all of you. Ashley looked at him, a flicker of relief warring with deep-seated distrust in her eyes. How long can we stay? The question caught David off guard. He hadn't thought that far ahead, but the thought of sending them away now filled him with an inexplicable dread. For now you can stay as long as you need, he said, trying to sound reassuring. Don't worry about that now, okay? The day passed in a surreal blur of bottles, diapers, and attempts to make Ashley feel safe. David canceled all his meetings, delegating everything to his VPs. For the first time in a long time, his focus was entirely on these children and the mystery that surrounded them. In the afternoon, while the twins napped, he found Ashley sitting on the balcony, gazing pensively at the sprawling city below. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sitting beside her. Ashley took a moment to answer. "Mommy liked high places. She said you could see the future from up there." David felt another pang. "Your mother sounds like a very special person." Ashley nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I miss her." Without thinking, David put an arm around her small shoulders. To his surprise, she didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, she leaned into him, a small, weary weight, as if finally allowing herself a moment of comfort. In that moment, David made a decision. Regardless of what his investigation turned up, he would protect these children. If they were, as his heart was beginning to scream, his grandchildren, he would spend the rest of his life making up for lost time. That night, long after the children had fallen asleep, David received a text from Mike. "Initial info coming in. It's complicated. We need to talk in person." A chill ran down David's spine. What had his PI found? He had barely processed the message when a high-pitched scream tore through the suite. Rushing into the bedroom, he found Ashley thrashing in the bed, trapped in a nightmare. "Emily, Emily, wake up," he called, gently shaking her. Ashley's eyes flew open, wide with terror. The car, the noise mommy. David pulled her into a hug, feeling her small body tremble against his. "Shh, it's all right. It was just a bad dream. You're safe now." Gradually, Ashley calmed, her breathing evening out. David continued to hold her, murmuring soothing words. "Want to tell me about the dream?" he asked gently when she finally pulled back. The girl hesitated, then the words came pouring out in a torrent of anguish. "We were in the car. Mommy was driving fast. She seemed scared. Then there was a loud noise and the car spun. I saw Mommy. She wasn't moving." David's heart broke. It was clear Ashley had witnessed the accident that took her mother's life. The guilt he felt for not being there for his own daughter, for these children, was a physical weight in his chest. "Emily," he said gently, holding her shoulders. "What happened wasn't your fault. Your mother loved you, and your brothers more than anything. She wanted you all to be safe." Ashley looked at him, her large eyes swimming with tears. "Do you think she'd be proud of me for taking care of the babies?" "I'm sure of it," David replied, a lump forming in his throat. "You're an amazing girl, Emily. Your mother would be so, so proud." David stayed awake long after Ashley drifted back to sleep, his mind a whirlwind of questions and a burgeoning sense of responsibility. The next morning, while the kids were still asleep, David met Mike in his private office at the hotel. "What did you find out?" David asked, his anxiety palpable. Mike looked uneasy. "Robert, what I found, it's complicated. The children don't officially exist. There's no record of birth, no documentation at all." David frowned. "How is that possible?" "It's as though someone wanted to keep them hidden," Mike continued. "But there's more. I found a photo." He hesitated before handing David an envelope. With trembling hands, David opened it. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman holding a baby. His heart nearly stopped. It was Jennifer, his daughter. Where did you get this?" David asked, his voice hoarse. "It was hidden in the lining of the cart the girl was pushing," Mike explained. "Robert, do you think—" David couldn't take his eyes off the photo. The resemblance between the woman in the picture and Ashley was undeniable. And the baby, could it be her? "I need more, Mike," David said finally, looking up. "Find out everything you can about Sarah's last few years, where she was, who she was with." When Mike left, David was alone with his thoughts and the picture of Jennifer. Memories he had buried for years began to surface. The last terrible fight with his daughter, the harsh words, the sound of the door slamming shut. A sound from the suite pulled him back to the present. The children were waking. Entering the bedroom, he saw Ashley sitting up, cradling one of the twins. The morning light illuminated her profile, and for a moment David saw Jennifer in her so clearly it took his breath away. "Good morning," he said softly, approaching the bed. "How are you all today?" Ashley looked at him, a small smile on her lips. "Better Sophie likes it when I sing to her mommy," always sang. David sat on the edge of the bed. "Your mother sounds like she was a very special person." Ashley nodded, tears once again filling her eyes. "I miss her." At that moment, David made a resolve. Regardless of what his investigation uncovered, he would protect these children. If they were truly his grandchildren, as he increasingly believed, he would do everything possible to make up for the years lost with Jennifer. "Emily," he said gently, "I know you've been through a lot, but I want you to know that while you're here, you'll be safe. I'll look after all of you." The girl looked at him, her eyes so like Jennifer's, filled with a mix of hope and caution. "Promise." David felt a knot in his throat. "I promise." The following days passed in a haze of activity. David split his time between caring for the children and working with Mike to unravel the mystery of their past. Every new piece of information, every familiar gesture from the kids, only cemented his suspicion that they were indeed the family he thought he had lost forever. Slowly, Ashley began to open up, sharing small details of her life with her mother. She spoke of their constant moving, of the nights her mother would hold her tight and tell her everything would be okay. David listened to every word, his heart heavy with guilt for what his daughter must have endured. The twins, meanwhile, blossomed under the care and stability. Their smiles and laughter filled the suite with a joy David hadn't felt in years. He often found himself lost in thought, imagining how different things could have been if he had been there, if he had supported Jennifer instead of pushing her away. One afternoon, while playing with the twins on the living room floor, David noticed Ashley watching him intently. "What is it, dear?" he asked. Ashley hesitated before speaking. You remind me of someone in the photos Mommy used to keep." David's heart leaped. "What photos?" "Old ones. She'd look at them sometimes and get sad." "There was a man in them?" Ashley frowned, trying to remember. She called him Dad. David felt as if the air had been punched from his lungs. He leaned closer to Ashley, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Emily? Your mom? What was her name?" The girl looked at him, confused by the sudden intensity in his question. Sarah, her name, was Sarah. In that single instant, all of David's suspicions coalesced into a painful, wonderful certainty. These children, these small souls that fate had dropped on his doorstep, were his grandchildren. The daughter he had lost, the one he had failed in so many ways, had given him a second chance. With tears in his eyes, David pulled Ashley into a hug, feeling her small, tense body gradually relax against him. "It's all right now," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "You're home." That night, after the children were asleep, David remained awake, his mind a maelstrom of emotions. He picked up his phone and called Mike. "Frank, I need you to speed up the investigation and add one more thing. Look for any information about the children's father." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Robert, are you sure this could open a can of worms?" "I know," David sighed, "but I need to know everything these children. They're my family. Frank, I have to protect them." After hanging up, David returned to the children's bedroom. He stood watching them sleep, their small chests rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. Ashley had mentioned her mother was running from someone dangerous. Was it the children's father? What had Jennifer been facing all those years? Guilt gnawed at him. If only he hadn't been so proud, so stubborn. If he had just looked for her, tried to reconcile, maybe she would still be alive. Maybe these children would never have known the horror of the streets. But now was not the time for regret. Now he had a chance to make things right, to be the grandfather these children deserved, the father Jennifer had always needed. The top-floor office of the Peninsula was silent, save for the soft ticking of a clock and David Miller's heavy breathing. The billionaire sat motionless in his leather chair, the phone trembling slightly in his hand as he contemplated the call he had to make. The golden light of dusk spilled through the panoramic windows, bathing the room in an amber glow that seemed to stir long-buried memories. On the mahogany desk before him lay an old photograph that had caught his eye. Jennifer at 16, beaming in her graduation dress, her eyes shining with promise. Beside it, a more recent photo Mike had found. Jennifer, pregnant, her face more mature, but still holding that same smile, so reminiscent of her late mother. David closed his eyes, and the memories washed over him. It was an autumn afternoon, much like this one, golden leaves dancing outside his office window, when Jennifer stood before him, a hand placed protectively over her 5-month belly. Her usually gentle face was taut with a determination he had never seen before. "You don't understand, Stan, Dad," Jennifer's voice echoed in his memory, laced with hurt and resolve. "For the first time in my life I'm making my own decisions. Why is that so hard for you to accept?" David found himself right back in that moment, his own frustration and fear twisting into words as sharp as daggers. "You're throwing your life away, Sarah. Everything I've built, everything I planned for you, for what to get involved with someone you barely know." "That's the problem," Jennifer had exploded, tears glistening in her green eyes. "How your plans do at your expectations, your need to control every aspect of my life. What about my dreams, Dad, have you ever asked? What I want. What you want is to plunge headfirst into a relationship that will destroy your future?" He had slammed his hand on the desk, rattling the photo frames. "Don't you see you're being manipulated, that you're risking not only your life, but this child's too?" Jennifer had recoiled as if slapped, her hands instinctively shielding her belly. "You haven't even tried to meet him, Dad. You know nothing about our life, our plans. You're so blinded by your own prejudice. You don't see that I'm happy for the first time in years." "Happy?" David had let out a bitter laugh. "Sarah, you dropped out of law school in your last year. You cut off all your friends. You moved to a tiny apartment in a rundown part of town. Is that what you call happiness?" "I call it freedom," Jennifer retorted, her voice shaking with emotion. "Freedom to find out who I am without having to carry the weight of the Johnson name, without having to live under the shadow of your impossible expectations." David felt the blood rush to his head. "Impossible expectations. I just wanted the best for you, Sarah. I wanted to protect you, to give you every opportunity that you never had." Sarah interrupted, eyes flashing. "Have you ever thought that maybe I don't want to be the perfect heist to the Johnson Empire, that maybe I want to build my own life? Make my own mistakes?" "Mistakes?" David had thundered. "Is that how you see your future, as a string of mistakes you'll make, just to prove you can? And this child, have you thought about what will happen when reality hits you?" Jennifer squared her shoulders, a strange calm replacing her earlier agitation. "Yes, Dad, I've thought about it a lot. And you know what? I'm going to love this baby unconditionally. I'll support their dreams, even if they're different from mine. I'll let them be whoever they want to be, without trying to mold them into my idea of perfect." Her words had struck him like a physical blow, but his wounded pride won out. "If that's how you see things, Sarah, then maybe it's better if you go and don't bother coming back when everything falls apart. I won't be here to fix your mistakes." The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer stared at him for a long moment, and David saw something die in her eyes, the last spark of hope that her father might understand. "Goodbye, Dad," she whispered, and the soft click of the door closing behind her echoed like a final judgment. The shrill ring of the phone tore him from his reverie. It was Mike. "Mr. Johnson," the investigator's voice was tense. "I found something. You need to see this in person." 20 minutes later, Mike stepped into the office, carrying a thick folder and a grave expression. Robert noticed the investigator's usually steady hands trembled slightly as he placed the documents on the desk. "They're the hospital records of the twins," he began, opening the folder. "They were born at St. Mars Hospital in Portland exactly 2 years ago, but there's something very strange. They were registered under the name CLA Bennett." David frowned. A fake name. "Yes, and it wasn't the only one," Mike went on, spreading more documents across the desk. "I found records of Sarah, using at least 3 different identities in recent years: Claire Bennett, Anna Thompson, Maria Stevens. She was clearly trying not to be found, and she did an impressive job. The identities were very well constructed, with credit histories, employment references, everything." "That must have cost a fortune," David muttered, examining the papers. "Where did the money come from?" Mike shifted uncomfortably. "That's another interesting part. Sarah had a secret account opened years before. Before she left home, she'd been making small deposits regularly, building up an emergency fund. By the time she left, she had almost $500,000 saved." David felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Jennifer had planned her escape for years. "And before the twins?" he asked, dreading the answer. Mike hesitated. "There are disturbing medical records, 3 visits in 6 months, broken ribs, extensive bruises, a serious concussion each time you—" She gave a different explanation: domestic accidents, falls, even a supposed horseback riding accident. David closed his eyes, fighting a wave of nausea. His daughter, his Jennifer, had suffered repeated brutal abuse while he nursed his wounded pride. "I managed to locate someone who can shed more light on what happened," Mike continued, his voice softer. "Jennifer Walsh, a nurse who took care of Sarah when the twins were born. She agreed to speak with you." 2 hours later, David sat in a discreet coffee shop on the outskirts of the city, across from a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a weary expression. "Sarah arrived red at the hospital in premature labor," Jennifer began, her hands gripping a coffee cup. "She was soaked from the rain, shivering with cold, and fear the twins were in fetal distress, and we had to do an emergency C-section." "How was she?" David asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jennifer looked at him with a mix of pity and reproach. Terrified, she kept glancing over her shoulder, insisting we register the babies under a false name. She begged for extra security at her room door. "Why didn't she ever come to me?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. "She tried," Jennifer responded gently. Once, a few months before the twins were born, she went to your office, but security wouldn't let her up, apparently, on your orders. The weight of his own folly threatened to crush him. That single angry order had closed the last door for his daughter when she needed him most. After the twin were born, Jennifer continued, Sarah became even more cautious. She kept moving from place to place, always checking if she was being followed. She dyed her hair, wore colored contact lenses, anything not to be recognized. Did she ever mention me? Jennifer hesitated. Sometimes, mostly, when she had a high fever after the C-section, she called out for you. In her delirium, asked for forgiveness, said she wanted you to meet your grandkid, but it was too dangerous. Back at the hotel, David found Ashley on the suite's balcony, hugging her knees as she watched the sunset. The golden light illuminated her profile, and for a painful moment, she was the spitting image of Jennifer at that age. "May I sit with you?" he asked softly. Ashley nodded, making room. He noticed she was holding something, a small, colorful ribbon. "Was it your mother?" he asked. Ashley stroked the ribbon. "Yes, it was from her blue dress, her favorite. She gave it to me, before the accident. She said it would bring me luck." David took a deep breath. "Can you tell me more about the last days you spent with her?" Ashley was silent for a long moment. "She cried a lot at night," she finally said, her voice small, "when she thought I was asleep, and she was always checking the windows and doors over and over. She had a special box where she kept important papers, and she made me memorize a phone number for emergencies." "You moved around a lot." "All the time," Ashley sighed. "Mom said we were like explorers on a grand adventure, but I knew she was scared sometimes when she thought she saw someone following us. She turned so pale, like she'd seen a ghost." "And the last time?" David asked gently. "Before the accident." Ashley wrapped her arms tighter around her knees. "It was different. Mom was more scared than usual. She woke me up in the middle of the night, saying we had to leave right away. We only took a few clothes, and her special box she drove for a long time, really fast. Her voice failed her, and David wrapped her in his arms again, feeling her small frame tremble. "It's all right," he murmured. "You're safe now, all of you." Later that night, after putting the kids to bed, David returned to his office. The day's discoveries weighed on him like lead. Jennifer's fear, her desperate attempts to protect her children, the dark mystery that chased her. He picked up his phone and dialed Mike's number. "I want you to dig deeper," he instructed, his voice resolute. "Bank records, financial transactions, anything that might tell us what or who Sarah was running from. Also check that emergency phone number she gave Emily and Frank. Spare no resources. We need to find the truth." Staring at the city lights, David made a silent promise to Jennifer. He had failed to protect her, but he would not fail her children. This time, he would face whatever shadows lurked, whatever the cost. In the room next door, Ashley finally drifted off, still clutching the blue ribbon, while the twins breathed softly. Through the slightly open door, David watched them, his heart heavy. The puzzle pieces were fitting together, forming an increasingly dark picture. Jennifer had spent her last years in a constant nightmare. Now it was his turn to discover the truth and ensure her children would never have to live in fear again. Tomorrow he would dig into the past with even greater determination. So many questions remained, but one thing was clear. Wherever she was, he would do everything he could to honor her sacrifice and protect the precious legacy she had left behind. Night fell slowly over Chicago, wrapping the peninsula in deep shadows. In the top-floor office, David Miller remained awake, his eyes fixed on Jennifer's photographs, searching for clues he should have seen. The clock neared midnight when his phone buzzed. A message from Mike. "Found something in the hospital records. The nurse didn't tell us everything. Meeting tomorrow first thing." A chill crept down David's spine. What else was there? What other dark secrets had Jennifer carried? He rose and walked to the window. The city glittered below, thousands of lights like earthly stars. Out there, somewhere, lay the answers. "Forgive me, Sarah," he whispered into the night. "I promise I'll make it right. Your children will never have to run or be afraid again. This time, I'll do the right thing." With those words echoing in his mind, David finally left his office. Tomorrow would be another day of seeking answers, another day of piecing together the puzzle his daughter had left behind. And this time, he wouldn't rest until he uncovered the whole truth, no matter how painful it might be. Dawn had barely broken when David arrived at the crash site. The secondary road, bordered by tall pines, looked strangely peaceful. It was hard to imagine that here, on this seemingly harmless curve, his daughter's life had ended. Mike was already there, speaking with a retired local police officer, Tom Miller, who had been first on the scene. "It was one of the worst I've ever seen," Tom remarked, leading them to the spot where Jennifer's car had veered off the road. The driver was clearly running from something the tire track showed she was well over the speed limit. David's stomach churned at the sight of the deep scratches still visible on the guardrail. And the children. "A miracle?" Tom shook his head. "The woman your daughter must have done some maneuver at the last second. The driver's side took the full impact. The 3 little ones were in the back seat, protected by well-installed car seats." "We found this in the wreckage," Mike interjected, handing David a battered, yellowed envelope. "It was in a waterproof box under the driver's seat, addressed to you." With trembling hands, David opened it. Jennifer's elegant handwriting, so familiar, made his heart clench. "Dear Dad," the letter began. "If you're reading this, something went wrong. It means I couldn't get to you in time to explain everything face to face when as I planned." David had to pause, tears blurring his vision. Tom and Mike discreetly stepped away. "I know you must be furious with me for disappearing, for cutting off all contact, but Dad, I had no choice when I discovered the truth about James, about who he really was. It was too late for me, but not for my kids. Emily was born in the midst of chaos. James showed his true colors right after the control, the violence, the threats I tried to endure, thinking I could change him. What a fool I was when I found out I was pregnant with the twins. I knew I had to run. James has dangerous connections, bad people in high places who protect him, who cover up his crimes. I tried reporting him once, and I almost paid with my life. I'm heading home now. Dad, I finally realized I need your help, but if something happens to me, please protect my children. Emily is so strong, so brave, she doesn't deserve to carry the weight I placed on her tiny shoulders with all my love. Sarah. David carefully folded the letter, his mind racing. Jennifer had been coming back to him. A piercing scream broke the morning calm, coming from the car where Ashley had dozed off. David ran over, finding her thrashing in the back seat, caught in another nightmare. Mommy, the black car? It's coming, she screamed, her eyes squeezed shut. Emily, wake up, there, just a dream. David gently shook her until her terrified eyes snapped open. For a long moment, Ashley gasped for breath. Then her eyes focused on the landscape outside, and all color drained from her face. Here, she whispered. It was here. Do you remember what happened? David asked softly. Ashley nodded, silent tears rolling down her face. It was raining. Mommy was driving really fast, saying we were almost there, that we'd be safe soon. Then we saw headlights in the mirror. A black car. Mommy got so scared. Her voice faltered, and David held her close. What happened next, sweetheart? The black car had hit us on purpose. Mommy lost control. She yelled at me to protect the babies. Then everything went dark. An icy rage grew in David's chest. It wasn't an accident. Jennifer had been murdered. How did you take care of your siblings afterward? He asked gently. Ashley took a deep breath. When I woke up, it was really quiet. The babies were crying, but Mommy wouldn't move. I tried to wake her, but she was so cold. The words poured out now, a flood of memories. I remembered what Mommy always said. If something happens, protect the twins. They need you. She had a bag in the trunk for emergencies. She showed me where it was. It had money papers, diapers, food. "How did you get out of the car?" David asked, marveling at her strength. "My seatbelt was stuck, but I could reach Mom's backpack. She always carried a small knife in there for emergencies. I cut the belt, and then I had to drag the babies out. They were crying so loud." Ashley wiped her tears. "Mom taught me everything. Don't trust anyone. She said, if something happens, grab your brothers and find shelter. Don't use cards. Don't call anyone. He has eyes everywhere. So you ran off with the babies." "Yes, I walked until I found a bigger road. A truck driver gave us a ride to the nearest city. After that, we hopped from shelter to shelter. I always made sure no one asked too many questions when they did. We left." David was in awe of her courage. "How did you manage to take care of the twins by yourself?" "Mom taught me everything," Ashley said with sad pride. "How to make formula change diapers, calm them when they cry. She said I was her little special helper. In the shelters, there were always other moms who helped too, even without asking questions." "And money?" "Mom left plenty in the emergency bag. I only used it for food and diapers like she taught me, but it was almost gone. That's why we came here. We were nearly out of money, and it was so cold." David pulled Ashley closer, his heart breaking. "You were incredibly brave, Emily. Your mom would be very proud." Ashley looked up at him, her eyes so much like Jennifer's. "She said someone here could help us, that if something happened, we should look for the Lux Hotel. She wrote the address on a piece of paper, but I lost it." The puzzle pieces clicked into place. Jennifer had been bringing the children to him. Back at the peninsula, after Ashley and the twins had fallen into a peaceful sleep, David met with Mike in his office. "What did you find out about the black car?" "Witnesses saw it leaving the scene in a hurry," Mike answered, checking his notes. "No license plate, tinted windows, a luxury model, probably an Audi A8. "And James?" Mike hesitated. "James, St. CLA, successful real estate businessman with significant political ties, no official criminal record, but—" He slid over some photos. "I found records of at least 3 ex-girlfriends who vanished. Without a trace, all investigations were closed with no conclusions." David examined the documents, anger simmering. "Hune's coming back, isn't he?" "Yes," Mike confirmed grimly. "My contacts say he's been asking questions around town. It's only a matter of time before he finds out where the kids are." David rose, gazing out at the waking city. "Then we need to be ready," he said with determination. "Sarah couldn't protect the children to the end, but I can and I will." "Sir," Mike sounded hesitant. "James Sinclair is a dangerous man with extensive resources and connections." "And I'm Robert Johnson," David interrupted, his voice like steel. "He may have money and connections, but I built an empire he wants to play fine, but this time the rules are mine." That night, watching Ashley sleep curled up with the twins, David made a silent vow to Jennifer. He had failed her, but he would not fail her children. The storm was coming, but this time he was ready. Jennifer's letter rested on his desk, a constant reminder of his past mistakes, but also a testament to her extraordinary courage, a courage he saw reflected every day in Ashley's determined eyes. The sun began to set over the city. Somewhere out there, Richard Thompson was closing in, but this time he would find a grandfather determined to protect his daughter's legacy, no matter the cost. The real battle was only beginning. Night gave way to morning as David remained in his office, Jennifer's letter still in his hands. The rising sun cast long shadows across the floor. A soft sound at the door brought him back to the present. It was Ashley, still in her pajamas. "Couldn't sleep either?" David asked gently, opening his arms. Ashley shook her head, climbing into his lap. Her eyes, so like Jennifer's, landed on the letter. "Is that from Mommy?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Yes," David answered, noticing her fidgeting hands. "She wrote it to me saying she was coming home." Ashley was still for a moment. "She talked a lot about going home," she finally said. "These last weeks she kept looking at old photos and crying. There was one in particular she always carried." "Which photo, sweetheart?" Ashley slipped off David's lap and went to the shopping cart, now cleaned and stored in a corner. With nimble fingers, she lifted a section of the lining, revealing a hidden compartment. From it, she took a folded, worn photograph. David's heart stopped. It was him and Jennifer at the last Christmas they spent together, smiling as they decorated the tree. She said that was her last happy Christmas, Ashley remarked, tracing the photo's edge. Sometimes when she thought I was asleep, she talked to the photo saying she was sorry. David swallowed hard, remembering their final cruel words. "Emily," he began gently, "can you tell me more about how you cared for your brothers after the accident? I know it's hard to talk about, but I need to understand everything that happened." Ashley climbed back into his lap, still clutching the photo. Her voice carried a maturity that broke his heart. "Mom always prepared me for the worst," she said. "Every day we played something she called the survival game. She taught me where to find hidden money, how to make baby formula correctly, how to change diapers. She said I was her little warrior and that I needed to be ready for anything." "So you already knew what to do when she didn't wake up." Ashley completed his sentence, her voice trembling slightly. "She had a list in the emergency bag steps I should follow. 1, check. The baby's 2. Grab the emergency bag. 3, leave without being seen. 4, never use cards or make phone calls. 5, go to different shelters every few days." David listened, amazed and horrified. Jennifer had turned her daughter into a survival strategist. "At the first shelter," Ashley went on, "a lady named Rosa helped me a lot. She realized I was alone with the twins, but asked no questions. She taught me tricks to soothe the babies when they cried all at once, how to bathe them without using too much water." How long did you stay there?" 3 days. Mom said never to stay in the same place longer than that constant movement keeps you safe, she always said. Ashley paused, frowning. "Then we got a ride with a truck driver to another city. He was nice, reminded me of Grandpa in the pictures." David's heart tightened. "What other pictures did your mom keep?" Ashley went back to the cart, pulling out a small, battered notebook. "Her diary," she explained, handing it to David. "She wrote in it every night after she thought I was asleep. Sometimes she cried while writing." With trembling hands, David opened it. The first pages, dated 5 years ago, detailed her life after leaving home. "October 12th, found out today, I'm pregnant. My first thought was to call Dad to share the news like I always dreamed. But then I remembered our last conversation, the hurtful words. How could I have been so blind? James showed his true face today. The control, the anger. I'm so afraid." David read on, each page revealing more of the nightmare. The diary documented the escalating abuse, the failed attempts to get help, the shocking discoveries about Richard's business. March 15th. Emily is my light so small, so strong, James ignores her completely, which might be a blessing today. I discovered more about his business, the political connections, the dirty money. I tried gathering evidence up, but he has eyes everywhere. If something happens to me, I need to make sure Emily is prepared. June 2nd, pregnant again, twins. When the doctor told me, I cried for hours, not with joy, but with terror. I have to get my children out of here before it's too late. I started training Emily, turning everything into a game so she wouldn't be scared. My little warrior learns quickly. The following pages detailed Jennifer's methodical escape plan. December 10th. The twins were born today. They're perfect. Emily loves them already, humming the same lullabies Dad used to sing to me. My heart aches for him. Will he ever forgive me? Will he understand? I ran not out of rebellion, but for survival. David had to stop, tears blurring his vision. Ashley snuggled closer, offering silent comfort. There were more hiding spots in the cart, she said softly. Mom kept important papers in lots of different places. She said never to keep all your eggs in one basket. David smiled sadly at the old saying. With Ashley's help, they methodically searched the cart, discovering an impressive collection of evidence. Bank statements, photos of clandestine meetings, documents proving Richard's involvement in illegal enterprises. She wasn't just running away. David murmured, awed by his daughter's bravery. She was building a case against him. Mike arrived a few hours later. "James is definitely in town," he reported, his face grim. "He's been asking questions, showing pictures of the kids. He's using his contacts in the police to track them down." "What about the therapist?" "Dr. Martinez can start today. She has experience with traumatized children and understands the need for discretion." Ashley, who had dozed off on the couch, began to stir. "No, the black car, Mommy, watch out," she murmured. David gently woke her. "It's all right, dear. It was just a dream." But he knew they were memories. "I think it's time for us to talk with Dr. Martinez," he said softly. "She's a special doctor who helps children understand their dreams and memories. Would you like that?" Ashley hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Mom said sometimes we need help carrying the heavy things in our hearts." That afternoon, Dr. Martinez, a kind woman with a calm voice, arrived. Through a one-way mirror, David watched as Ashley gradually opened up, using dolls and drawings to reconstruct the final days. "It was raining a lot," Ashley explained, moving a toy car. "Mom said we were almost there, that Grandpa would help us. Then we saw the headlights of the black car in the mirror." The session lasted 2 hours, revealing more details of her incredible journey. "She's extraordinary," Dr. Martinez commented afterward. "Her capacity for adaptation and resilience is remarkable, but she's also carrying a huge burden for someone so young. She'll need a lot of support to process everything." "She'll have all the support in the world," David vowed, glancing at Ashley playing with the twins. "She'll never have to carry that burden alone again." That evening, David returned to Jennifer's diary. The last entry was dated April 20th. "Finally, I have enough proof. Documents, photos, recordings, all stashed in different places, just like Dad taught me. James found out I've been collecting evidence. I don't have much time tomorrow. We leave for home for Dad. He'll know what to do, like he always has. I just hope he can forgive me." The next day, she died. David's phone vibrated. A message from Mike. "Suspicious movement around the hotel. James may have located us." David looked at the sleeping children. Ashley had survived so long on her own. Now it was his turn. He picked up his phone and started making calls. It was time to use all his power. Jennifer had died trying to bring her children home. He would not let her sacrifice be in vain. Night fell, and David kept vigil. Jennifer's diary and evidence spread before him. Tomorrow Richard would come for the children, but this time he would face David Miller. At 3 a.m., Mike sent another message. "He's here at the hotel, arrived 10 minutes ago." David glanced at the sleeping children, then at the photo of Jennifer. It was time. "I'm on my way," he replied to Mike. "Get everything ready as we planned." The moment of confrontation had arrived, and this time the shadows would meet a grandfather determined to protect his family at any cost. Morning arrived cold and gray at the peninsula. The sky over Chicago was heavy with the promise of more snow. David had been in his office since the early hours, reviewing the dossier Mike had just delivered on Richard Thompson. Businessman of the Year in 2022, Mike pointed to a magazine photo of Richard in a perfectly tailored suit, smiling alongside prominent politicians. He built a real estate empire in record time. His specialty is urban revitalization. He buys properties in poor areas, forces out the residents, and rebuilds for a luxury clientele. David studied the photo, noting the cold, calculating eyes behind the polished smile. Political connections. Too many. Mike slid more documents across the desk. He has 3 senators in his pocket, half the police department judges. He's built an impressive web of influence. Over the years, no one ever questioned where his money came from. Some tried. Mike hesitated. 2 investigative journalists died in accidents while looking into his operations. A district attorney building a case against him had a sudden heart attack at 45. David felt a shiver run up his spine. Sarah found out something about his business, didn't she? From what I gathered in her diary, yes, she started noticing suspicious pattern, large sums of money being laundered through his real estate developments, politicians receiving bribes disguised as campaign donations. A soft knock on the door interrupted them. It was Ashley, still in her pajamas, holding a stuffed bunny. "Good morning, sweetheart." David quickly closed the files. "Did you sleep well?" Ashley shook her head. "I had bad dreams about the bad man." David and Mike exchanged a worried glance. "Which bad man, Emily?" "The one who made Mommy cry," she replied, climbing onto David's lap. "He's close, I can feel it." As if on cue, Mike's phone buzzed with a text. His face paled as he read it. "He just filed an emergency custody petition in court," Mike said grimly, "claiming he's the twins' biological father and that you kidnapped them." David held Ashley tighter, feeling her small body stiffen. "Call our legal team. I want the best family lawyers in the country here within 2 hours, and Frank implement the shadow protocol." Mike nodded, making a flurry of calls. The shadow protocol was the contingency plan they had devised for this exact moment. "Emily," David said gently, "remember when we talked about possibly needing to make another trip?" The girl nodded, her wide eyes serious. "Like the hiding games Mama used to do." "Something like that. But this time you won't be alone. I'll be with you and the twins the whole time." An hour later, the presidential suite was a hub of controlled chaos. A team of elite lawyers filled the living room, while security experts swept the perimeter. Diana Chen, the lead family attorney, studied the documents. "He's clever," she observed. "He's built a perfect public image philanthropist champion of social causes. It'll be hard to convince a judge he's dangerous without solid evidence." "We have Sarah's diary," David argued, "photos of her injuries, hospital records." "Which can be explained away as accidents," Diana pointed out. "We need more, something he can't deny or explain." As if on cue, Mike rushed in. "I found something a former employee at James's mansion, Maria Gonzalez. She was there while Sarah lived with him. She's willing to testify." "Where is she now?" "Hiding after Sarah fled. James fired her and tried to have her deported. She's been living in the shadows ever since, but she kept evidence, photos, recordings." "Bring her here immediately," David commanded. While the legal machine churned, preparations were made to move. A safe house on the outskirts of the city, fortified and legally untouchable, was ready. Ashley watched everything with alert eyes, helping pack the twins' things with heartbreaking efficiency. "Grandpa," she called softly, using the term for the first time, "is the bad man going to hurt us like he hurt Mommy?" David knelt to her level. "No, sweetheart, never again. I promise I'll protect you no matter what." By mid-afternoon, Maria Gonzalez arrived, a small woman with eyes that had seen too much. "Mr. Johnson," she began, her hands trembling. "There's so much I need to tell you. Your daughter, she was an angel. I tried to help her when I realized what was happening, but he has eyes everywhere." For 2 hours, Maria recounted the nightmare she had witnessed. "She found something," Maria explained, "something in his papers. One night I found her in the office copying documents. With shaking hands, she said she needed proof that nobody would believe her otherwise." "Where are those documents now?" Diana asked. "Sarah hid them. She made me memorize a series of numbers, said they were important, that someone would need them one day." David's heart raced. He recognized the sequence Maria recited. It was the code for a safety deposit box at a bank where Jennifer had once interned. "Already on it," Mike said, heading for the door. While they waited, the security team finished loading up. The phone rang. It was the front desk. "Mr. Johnson, there's a man here insisting on seeing you, James Sinclair." "How much longer until we're ready to leave?" David whispered to the head of security. 20 minutes max." "Keep him busy," David instructed the front desk. "Tell him I'm in an important conference." The next few minutes were a whirlwind of silent activity. When the private elevator finally reached the ground floor, carrying David with Ashley in his arms and the guards with the twins, Richard was still arguing at the desk. Through the glass doors, David caught his first glimpse of the man. Tall, well-dressed, with the eyes of a predator. For a moment, their gazes locked. David saw a flicker of recognition, then something more sinister. But David didn't stay. With military precision, the convoy of cars left the hotel through a side exit, disappearing into the falling night. At the safe house, after settling the children, David got a call from Mike. "We found the documents in the safety deposit box." The investigator's voice was electric. "Robert, it's much bigger than we thought. Sarah didn't just uncover his money laundering operations, she found evidence tying James to disappearances murders." "Keep everything secure," David instructed. "Tomorrow we start the counterattack." He lingered for a moment, watching Ashley sleep. The twins breathed softly in their cribs. The real battle was only beginning. Richard Thompson had built an empire on secrets and blood, but this time he would face David Miller, a man with resources equal to his own, and a just cause. A message from Diana buzzed on his phone. "Preliminary hearing set for tomorrow, 9 a.m. He's moving fast." David smiled grimly. Richard wanted a war. Fine. But this time it would be on his terms. Outside, snow began to fall, reminding David of the night he found them. Fate had given him a second chance. This time, he wouldn't fail. In the improvised command center in the house's basement, David gathered his team. "Starting tomorrow," he announced, "we launch our offensive. James wants to use the legal system. Great will show him what it's like to face someone who can really fight back. I've prepared the initial responses, and with the new evidence Frank found," Diana began. "No," David interrupted. "Hold the key evidence for the right moment. Let James think he's winning, that he has the upper hand. The more confident he is, the more careless he'll become." Mike smiled, recognizing the tactic. Just like old times, boss, let the opponent think he's winning until it's too late. Night wore on. David went upstairs to check on the children. Ashley was sitting up in bed, watching the snow. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "Mommy always said snow was magic, that it could hide our tracks when we needed to run." David sat beside her. "You don't have to run anymore, sweetheart. Now it's our turn to fight." Ashley looked at him with those Jennifer-like eyes. "Promise you won't leave us, that you won't give up on us like everyone else did." "I promise," David replied firmly. "I'll never abandon my family again. Never." Outside, the snow continued to fall. Somewhere, Richard Thompson was planning his next move, confident in his power. But this time, the shadows would find a united family, shielded by a man determined to fix the past and secure the future for the grandchildren fate had returned to him. The real battle was just beginning. The state Supreme Court was packed that morning. A tense hush filled the air. David straightened his tie, occasionally glancing toward a nearby room where Ashley waited with Dr. Martinez. Richard Thompson sat at the petitioner's table, his relaxed demeanor radiating a confidence that made David's blood boil. "Ready," Diana Chen whispered. "Once we start, there's no turning back." David nodded. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of preparations. "All rise," announced the bailiff. "The state Supreme Court is now in session, the Honorable Judge Catherine Montgomery presiding." Judge Montgomery, known for her unwavering integrity, surveyed the courtroom. "This court is convened to decide custody of Emily Sophie and Maxwell St. Clair Johnson," she began. "Given the sensitive nature of this case and the serious accusations on both sides, I will proceed with great caution. Mr. Reynolds, please present Mr. St. Clair's case." Richard's attorney rose. "Your Honor, my client is a respected businessman, a philanthropist, and most importantly, the biological father of 3 children who were unlawfully taken from him. Mr. Johnson, using his influence and financial power, essentially kidnapped these children." "Objection, Your Honor," Diana interrupted. "That is an inaccurate portrayal of the facts." "Sustained," the judge replied. "Mr. Reynolds, stick to provable facts." For an hour, Richard's attorney painted a picture of a devoted father using carefully chosen photos and testimonies. Robert watched with disgust and grudging admiration. Finally, it was Diana's turn. Your Honor, before I present our evidence, I would like to call our first witness, Carlos Martinez, former driver for Mr. St. CLA. Richard shifted almost imperceptibly. Carlos entered, a middle-aged man with visible scars on his face. Mr. Martinez, how long did you work for Mr. St. Clair? 5 years, ma'am. I was his personal driver from 2018 to 2023. During that time, did you have occasion to observe his interactions with Sarah Johnson? Carlos swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am. I drove them everywhere. I saw a lot more than I wanted. Could you elaborate? At first she seemed happy, but then arguments started in the car. He would grab her arm too tightly one time. He hesitated. Go on, Mr. Martinez, the judge prompted. One time he shoved her into the car so hard her head hit the door she was pregnant with Emily. At the time he said if she ever tried to leave, nobody would ever find her. Richard's lawyer objected, but was overruled. For 2 hours, Carlos detailed a pattern of abuse. And why are you testifying now, Mr. Martinez? Diana asked. Carlos touched his scars. Because I tried to help her escape once, that's how I got these, and because, his voice faltered, because on the night of the accident I saw the black car that followed her, I recognized the driver, one of Mr. St. Clair's special security guys. A murmur rippled through the court. Diana then called Maria Gonzalez, the former housekeeper, who gave a poignant account of hiding documents and hearing Richard on the phone ordering people to take care of the problem. Then came the moment David dreaded, Ashley's recorded statement. The court watched in silence as the video played. Mommy was happy that day, Ashley said in the video. She said we were finally going home, that Grandpa would help us. Then we saw headlights in the mirror. She got so scared that car hit us on purpose. Right before we hit the tree, Mommy shouted, "Protect the babies." That was the last thing she said to me. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, but Diana wasn't finished. Your Honor, I would like to present our final piece of evidence. She signaled to Mike, who walked in with a sealed folder. These are the documents Sarah Johnson gathered in the last months of her life. They detail a massive criminal operation involving money laundering, extortion, and, she paused, multiple contracted murders. Richard finally lost his composure. This is ridiculous. These accusations are outrageous. Mr. St. CLA, the judge cautioned sternly, maintain your composure or you will be removed from the courtroom. Diana pressed on. Among these documents, Your Honor, is an audio recording from the night of the accident. Sarah, fearing for her life, activated her phone's recorder. The device was recovered from the wreck. The room held its breath as the recording began. Faster! Jennifer's panicked voice. They're coming. Sounds of the engine, screeching tires. Mommy, I'm scared, Ashley's small voice. It'll be okay, sweetie. We're almost... Oh, God, no. Metal on metal. This is a message from Mr. St. CLA, an unknown male voice. No one runs from him. More sounds of impact, then silence. Richard was pale, his lawyers whispering furiously. It was then that David asked to speak. Your Honor, he began, rising, I know I've made many mistakes. I failed my daughter when she needed me most. My pride and stubbornness cost me. Precious years I could have spent with Sarah and my grandchildren. His voice shook but remained steady. But I'm not here just seeking redemption. I'm here because 3 innocent children need protection. Emily Huam, who at 5 years old has shown more courage and strength than most adults. I know Sophie and Maxwell, who've barely started life and have already known so much suffering. Sarah, his voice caught. My daughter died trying to save her children, trying to bring them to me. She believed till her last breath that I could protect them. I can't bring her back. I can't undo my past errors, but I can honor her final wish. I can give her kids the love, safety, and family she always wanted for them. The courtroom was silent. Judge Montgomery studied him. This court has seen substantial evidence of abuse manipulation, and most grave of all, direct involvement in what now appears to be premeditated murder. Mr. Sinclair, you are hereby remanded into custody." As officers approached Richard, she continued, "Sole and permanent custody of the children is granted to Robert Johnson. Furthermore, all evidence presented here will be forwarded to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation." Richard was taken away in handcuffs, hurling threats. But David barely heard him. His eyes were on the side door, where Ashley was running in. "Is it over?" she asked, throwing herself into his arms. "Can we stay with you forever?" "Yes, sweetheart," he answered, tears streaming freely. "You're home now, for good." That evening, in the house that was now truly theirs, David watched Ashley playing with the twins. For the first time, she looked like a child. "It will take time," Dr. Martinez, who stayed for dinner, remarked. "But they'll heal. Children are incredibly resilient when they feel safe and loved." David nodded, thinking of Jennifer. "Grandpa," Ashley called, holding up a book. "Can you read us a story Mommy always read before bedtime?" "Of course, darling," he answered, settling on the rug with them. As he read, David reflected on how life could change. Weeks ago, he was a lonely man, filled with regret. Now he was a grandfather. The healing would be long, but they would face it together. Snow began to fall outside, reminiscent of that fateful night, but this time it carried the promise of new beginnings. Ashley was asleep when he finished, her hand clutching the blue ribbon. The twins were dozed off, pressed against him. Gently, he took out his phone and texted Diana. "Prepare the papers to legally change their last name to Johnson. Sarah would want that." The reply came quickly. "Already in progress, and Robert, she would be proud of all of you." David looked at the portrait of Jennifer now hanging in the living room. "Thank you, Sarah," he whispered, "for giving me a second chance, for trusting your most precious treasures to me. I promise I won't let you down this time." Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside that home, warmed by love, winter felt far away. The nightmare was over. The healing had begun. Spring arrived in Chicago, bringing the scent of flowers and renewal. David watched from the porch as landscapers finished the garden of their new house, an elegant mansion in a suburb surrounded by ancient trees. "Grandpa," Ashley's voice rang out, "look, the roses we planted are sprouting." David smiled, walking to join her. She was kneeling by the flower bed, her eyes shining. "They're just like the ones Mommy loved most," she said softly. Across the garden, Jackson and Olivia, now nearly 2, took their first wobbly steps together, encouraged by their nanny, Maria Gonzalez. "They did it," Ashley cried, running to hug them. "Grandpa, they're walking." David recorded the precious moment on his phone. Later that day, at the new headquarters of the Sarah Johnson Family Protection Foundation, David reviewed the latest reports. In just 6 months, the foundation had already helped dozens of families escape abuse. The last families were successfully relocated. Diana Chen, now the foundation's legal director, informed him. And the Children's Support Center is ready for its grand opening next week. "How's Emily doing at her new school?" Diana asked. "Surprisingly well," David smiled. "She's thriving. She's made 2 close friends, and her teacher says she's one of the best students in class." After months of therapy and love, Ashley was finally just a child. The nightmares had lessened. The phone rang. It was Maria. Ashley was home from school, eager to show him something. At home, Ashley proudly held up a colorful paper. "Look, Grandpa, I won the award for best essay in class." David read her work, titled, "My Family." "My family is different from most. I have 2 baby twin siblings who are the cutest ever, even when they both cry. At the same time, I have a nanny who makes the best cookies and tells stories in Spanish, and I have the best grandpa in the universe who saved us when we needed it most. My mom is an angel now, but she still watches over us from the sky. Sometimes I miss her, but I know she's happy, because we're safe. and loved. Grandpa says she smiles every time we smile, so I try to smile a lot. Some might think our family is small or strange, but to me it's perfect because it's not about how big a family is, but how much love there is in it. And in our family, we have enough love to fill the whole world. David hugged Ashley, silent tears rolling down his face. "How'd you like it, Grandpa?" she asked. "I loved it, darling. Your mother would be so proud." "I know," Ashley smiled, a radiant grin so like Jennifer's. "She's always proud of us now." A year had passed, a year of healing, challenges, and love. The twins filled the house with giggles. Ashley, his little warrior, had found peace. There were still tough moments, but now she knew she wasn't alone. David established new family traditions, Sunday picnics, nightly stories, and lighting a candle for Jennifer on special dates. The once empty mansion now overflowed with life. That evening, after tucking the twins in, he found Ashley on the garden bench. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How everything changed," she answered, her eyes on the stars. "Before I was so scared, always running, always hiding now. Now I feel at home." She smiled, snuggling against him. "You know, Grandpa Mommy always said we'd find our safe place someday. I think she knew it would be here with you." "You three are my safe place too, sweetheart," David said, his heart full. "You've all given me a second chance to have a family." The sun sank on the horizon. A gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers. The photo of Jennifer in the main hall seemed to capture her spirit, young, radiant, hopeful. At last, David felt he had honored her memory. "Bedtime, little one," David smiled. "Okay," she agreed, then paused at the door. She turned back with a smile that lit up the world. "Good night, Grandpa. I love you." "I love you too, darling, more than all the stars." As the house settled into silence, David lingered in the garden. One particularly bright star twinkled above, and he smiled, imagining Jennifer watching over them. "Thank you," he whispered into the night, "for giving me this second chance, for trusting me with your most precious treasures. I promise I'll always honor your memory by taking care of them." A gentle breeze stirred the red roses, as if in acknowledgement. Somewhere, David knew, Jennifer was smiling. The future stretched before them, full of promise. There would be challenges, but they would face them together, a family bound by choice, forgiveness, and unconditional love. The lights of the house shone in the night, a beacon of hope. The place Jennifer had so desperately sought for her children was now a reality. And though she wasn't there to see it, her love and courage lived on in every one of Ashley's smiles, every step the twins took, and every precious moment of the new life they had built together. The nightmare was over. A new chapter had begun, and this time it was a story of love, healing, and second chances, just as Jennifer had always dreamed for her family.